Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Love That Loves You Back, a podcast between myself, Valerie Kabov, and my dear friend, Jonathan Fremantle. I'm an artistic miscreant, otherwise known as a self-described third-generation art professional, who's currently raising a fourth-generation art professional, born in the depths of the Pale of Settlement in the former Soviet Union, and partly raised in Australia, lived and worked in London and Paris, and 15 years ago, by a quirk of fate, relocated to Zimbabwe, where I'm the co-founder of First Floor Gallery Harare, trying to figure out life, education, art, and predominantly love of art as life goes on. And without further ado, over to Jonathan.
Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, Jonathan Fremantle. I grew up in Cape Town and studied in London. I did a long apprenticeship in fine art in the old sense, and have been more making art in one way or another ever since then. I live in Edinburgh now, but I also lived for a while in Johannesburg, where I had Hazard Gallery, and that was the context that I met Valerie about 10, 12 years ago, and just loved the conversation we had immediately about painting and how painting is everything. And that conversation's been a constant source of joy and sustenance over the years. So it does make sense that we share the conversation, and look forward to where this goes.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it usually goes anywhere and everywhere, but somehow we always come back to art, and because it is the love that loves us back. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to sharing the journey. Hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another, with love and loving you back. So over the last couple of months of the episodes, we've been hearing messages asking us to include living artists that we discuss in conversation into the living conversation. And so with this in mind, we decided to, for the first time in the history of this podcast, to open up the podcast to a very special guest. Now, I consider our next guest to be easily the leading painter of his generation in Africa, and I will joust with anyone who says otherwise. This is, you can tell, I've been watching Wolf Hall for the last couple of months, so I'm jousting and researching Hans Holbein. But is a Zimbabwean artist, much beloved and represented by my gallery. So this is the point where I disclose full conflict of interest, and I don't care. Just watch me. Just watch me. So with this in mind, you and I, John, have been supporting and following his practice for a long time. So we're both somewhat expert on dissecting it, intersecting with it and discussing it. So, and also, enthusing over it. So with this in mind, I want to introduce the one and only Gresham Tapiwa Nyaude. And let's have a clap. Hey, Gresham, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
So enough talking about you, Gresham. What do you think about us?
No, I mean, this is so cool. I've never been on a podcast before through my work, and I'm like, you guys, and I've been following you, and you've been so insightful with the couple of episodes that I've watched, and I'm like, wow. And to be the first guest, and you guys, I mean, you're awesome. You're awesome. You're like a library podcast. I'm learning like whatever I miss.
give us details. What was specifically stood?
I wouldn't go into much detail, but I would say how much I didn't know. That was what stood out for me. Like, you talk about these people, like you talk about all these artists, all these practitioners, and I have no idea. And you just like talking like someone who lives around the block, and I'm like, wow, I need to do a little more research, or even maybe as artists, as young contemporary artists, we need to really put more effort in our art history, in our research and everything, in our theory. So to me, that was one of the most uh, uh, things that I found out this podcast, whereby like every time I listen to you guys, I hear a new name, and I'm like, wow, this is something that if I go to the library, I won't, because I mean, going to a library is tricky. You need to know the right context, what to look for, and you guys are just throwing it out there, which is relevant to me. And yeah, like it's been great for me.
So over to you, Jonathan. Kick off with
that. It's great to see you there, Gresham, and it's really I'm thrilled that you're the first person.
Congratulations, by the way. I love your show.
Oh,
I really like, wow, that's amazing.
Thanks. I'd like to have a catch up about that sometime with you. It's great that you're the first person we're talking to, because you're a real painter. You know, you're not a kind of
thank you.
As someone who's drawing and then coloring in, you know, or someone who's kind of coming to painting from an angle that's not pure. You know, I do see you as a pure painter. And really, you know, you talk about us introducing names and historical paintings. I would put your practice very much in that canon, you know, of traditional painting, in the way you build up to the surface, and the way you incorporate a narrative but make it your own, in the way that you, in a sense, are traditional in your painting style and technique, but also what you produce feels authentic and original. So I guess my first question was to do with that. You know, you have these motifs that you repeat, like chairs, lips, teeth, you know, the kind of camouflage, patination, and that's been pretty consistent through the time I've known you, which is quite a while, about 10 years. And you repeat these themes and these visual sort of language tricks. And even the color, even though your color is so strong, there's quite a lot of repetition of these color languages. And yet I still feel as if whenever I look at a new work, it feels fresh. And there are works that you do which feel like they're quantum leaps ahead of the work you've been making even like a month or two before. So I suppose I want to know how you begin a painting. You know, do the motifs come in through the act of painting, almost like a kind of accidental, instinctive thing, or do you begin with an image and then work from there? You know, how do you start?
Well, I mean, honestly, I just go with the guts, because one thing I've realized about myself as an artist is when I have like a sketch in my sketchbook that I want to translate on the canvas, it takes longer, because for me, it's like I'm trying to do the process like twice, like that, rather than me just going on the canvas and expressing myself. I would say like, it's like, for me, it's like, I always like to put this example whereby like, it's like you being given a drum. If you beat it, it produces sounds. If you play it, it produces music. So I try as much as I can to just play with the canvas. It leads me, and the motifs always come, because I'm not worried about style. I'm not worried about because I think as an artist, I've given myself the freedom that I can make a completely abstract work, and I can make a super realistic work at the same time. I'm versatile like that, and I don't have a problem with that. Some people have like come in oftentimes say to me like, we can't tell which came first, or where are you in your career, and I'm like, no, but it's, for me, it's like these symbols, these motifs, these patterns that I constantly repeat, and the way that I was like, let's say a chair, the way I was painting a chair like in 2017, and what I'm now interested in a chair is totally different. I'm digging deeper in the chair. It's not only as a utensil that you can sit on in the house, but what it represents, and furthermore, digging beyond, and really, again, about understanding myself through these sort of like household items that I grew up with. Because the chair is not only just a random chair, it's the chair that my grandmother, when my grandfather passed, my grandmother used to sit on the chair. And when she was away, you were not allowed to sit on the chair. You can sit on the chair, you could feel the power. It was mischief to sit on the chair when she was around. So it has all this story that I embedded in this chair motifs in the feet and everything. But I mean, yeah, so that's the thing whereby like I first of all, I talk about the chair, then I dig deeper, the stories growing up, now what it means in a current, in the contemporary Zimbabwe that I live in my existence, in the society that I grew up in, what does the chair represent and everything.
I really like the comment that you made, Gresham, that you're not concerned about stylistic consistency. I think that's fantastic. And I think it's something that a lot of young artists are really preoccupied with, or being committed to a stylistic consistency or their brand, quote unquote, which I find very disturbing. But I think what you're saying is even more profound, is that the reason you're not concerned is because you know that every painting you paint will be painted by Gresham. So
absolutely, yeah, that's true.
And you as a physical body, you are that vessel, right? So of course you're going to paint a Gresham painting because you're Gresham and you're not trying to be anyone else. So all the things that come out of Gresham are Gresham, and they're not tainted. It's only, you would only be concerned about stylistic consistency if you've assumed an artificial persona that is not integrated into who you are entirely. And I think that is like a really super extraordinary important point you're making. And so it's not, and I think in your work, for me, what I love is precisely that point where you also don't have to negotiate that difference between, oh, am I an abstractionist or am I a realist? Is like, I'm a painter and I'm Gresham and that's enough. You know, that's very Zen. It's like, it's very spiritual. It's like, it just goes to that point of spirituality. And I think you've already answered my question as to how your objectives as a painter changed over, say, the last 20 years, because you're saying is that you're looking at the similar subjects, but you're through your personal growth. So I think we've answered that question. How did you arrive at this very evolved and very enlightened version of, or approach to practice? Instead, like, who were your heroes, and have, like, not just in visually, but also who were your role models as painters in practice? What kind of cultivated that, fantastic, brilliant, sort of insightful approach to your self-knowledge, let's just say that, as a painter?
Well, yeah, I mean, because the thing with me is like, I think most of my heroes, they came from the modern art era. I'm really a fan of modern art, and looking what they were doing, it was just like totally insane. There were a lot of principles being followed, but a lot of rules being broken. I like that. Like, keep the principles but broke the rules. And so, like, if I look at the works of like Philip Gaston and what they were doing, they were just super playful. You think like, if you give someone who is a layman to painting and stuff, you think that a kid has made that painting. But you give it to someone who, like me, who's been in the industry for like 2 decades, I'll tell you, it is super difficult to reach that level of mastery. So that's insane. So that's the thing. What I like about most of these my heroes was like, I'm trying to connect to Gresham let's say when you was by like 5 years old, and if Gresham, if he was 5, with what I know, and if he could make a painting, and what I think that's what Gaston did, whereby like you could connect with his younger self and create a masterpiece. And it's so playful, it's so heavy, but commenting and talking about super intense, super serious subject matter. Yeah, to me, that has always been my passion, whereby, because first of all, we're talking about my involvement, whereby, of course, when first of all, as an artist, you want to work to be in a gallery. So of course you're gonna follow the principles, composition, color harmonies and stuff. The work is on the wall, but you can't be satisfied with that. You have to be picked amongst the other artists, because most of us, we grew up like, we never given a solo at first. We come up from a group show, and you want to be picked out of a group show and to be that person and say, okay, well, let's follow this guy, let's see his direction. And for me, that was always been the thing whereby I had like I had the thing whereby like I was like, okay, if that work is done is out of my hands, what's next? What's next for me? And how do I push my way? It might be composition, it might be color, it might be like one color, monochrome. Okay, let me paint. Let me paint with this color. What does this color mean? Mood. Like if you can use a color in an intelligent way, what does it mean to use one color and how it affects and how it evokes feeling in people and everything.
What inspired you to, I mean, because for me, you're probably the premier colorist, of your generation. In terms of very commitment to palette, right? To palette, to understanding color, right? And where does that come from as well? Because it's also unusual. And I mean, in my experience in here in Zimbabwe, across the continent, this kind of particular preoccupation with mixing paint, developing your own unique, having a personal relationship with each color and each shade that is really it's very intimate and direct, as opposed to just shoving things out of a tube and just going, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And where does that come from? Because you wouldn't have picked it up from other people around you, right?
Well, I mean, I think there's sort of like a mystery that happens within yourself as an artist, whereby there are things that you really pursue. I've worked with Wycliffe Ndopa for a very long time, and we had this one rule when we had like a studio crisis or creative bankruptcy, we would say, okay, dude, we don't know what you're doing, but can you make a clean painting? Can it be on point? Doesn't matter. It should be on point. And so then you have to go through your palette and try to produce something which is like, okay, let's say the subject matter is nonsense, whatever. But can you make a clean painting that people will say, okay, I've seen a painting. Okay, there's something. Can you so we had these guided principles that we had to follow. And that's when the pursuit for perfection for color came in, whereby, okay, if I'm gonna make a painting, I'm gonna use gray. My nickname is Gray. How can I best tell my story? And how can I find my own gray? And it came with a lot of trials and failures and stuff. And I still didn't even figure it out yet. But now it's just something that it's a mystery. I'm not satisfied with the tube, with the whatever the contents, like the pigment is which is in the tube. I'm never satisfied. I want to create my own. I want to be able to say, okay, maybe this is not Gresham's best painting, but look at the color palette. So it's a constant stage whereby you start to push. So you start to push certain colors, you start to put color harmonies that sort of don't agree, but so that's sort of like mystery, that's sort of confusion within two colors that say, okay, you can't mix yellow with whatever color, you can mix yellow with what, and you go for it, and you find why is it that you can't mix that color, and if you can get to the bottom of that, I think you have something.
It's a powerful, because actually you're one of the things that I love about your use of color is that quite often you think it works, but it shouldn't work. There are color combos which are idiosyncratic, or they fight with each other, or they've got a kind of zinging relationship, and that creates this dynamic kind of newness. It's definitely one of the things that makes your work feel different and new and original. You were saying something there that gives me a good wedge to the question I wanted to ask, which is when you're in a studio crisis, when your work's really when you're not hitting it and you're sort of in a dead end, what do you reach for? What's your solution? Are you looking at other artists? Or are you turning the canvas to the wall and going for a walk? Are you throwing things out the window? I just want to know what your strategy is in those moments where you've sort of run out of, you're not in touch with vision.
It depends with what I'm working on. I mean, if Valerie has put a deadline on me, I can't take the canvas to the wall. But I mean, yeah, like sometimes what I found often that helps me is if I'm trying to put something on the canvas and it's not working out, I try to put it in words. If I could write it on my pad
Wow.
and say, what is it exactly that, because I think it's there already in my head, but I just can't figure it out. I just can't unlock it. So what if I do it in writing and say, I want to write then I read it aloud to the canvas, I mean, spiritual, whatever. Then I say, okay, this color should be, because it has to feel right in the gut for me. But I mean, if I write about it, then of course I look at other artists. I look at sometimes I go to the local painting shop. I go, that's sort of like a color, sort of like palette whereby you got all shades of colors. And you say, okay, I'm not gonna buy paint from them, but I'm gonna work with what I have here to produce this color. With this color, this is exactly the color that I want. But it's not, but how do I, because everything as an artist has to come to some level of selfishness whereby, okay, I've found this blue or whatever, magenta. How can I make it mine? How can I own it? It has to be about you. And it's not about that magenta in the shop, but it should be yours. So that selfish level, you have to really go through it whereby like, okay, you say, now I need to make this work. So the other thing is I work on simultaneous work. Like I have 3 or 4 paintings. So then the other thing that I've find like sort of like interestingly recently is I have a dead canvas where I put all the toxic energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one of those dolls that you stab, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I've got one canvas that I'll stretch and I put the toxic energy. And whenever I'm hitting a dead end, the left out paint, I just put it there.
Those are both incredible tools that I'm going to completely borrow.
No, it is, but it is actually so much more structured. I try as a gallerist, I try to avoid getting involved in the artist process because it's entirely unique to every artist and entirely not relevant to the outcome, right? Because the only thing that is relevant to me is like as an audience, as a critical audience, but also as a mediator is what happened in the end, and provided we also negotiate what the end is, right?
Sure.
By the way, for everyone's watching, that's a very early Gresham painting at the back, that is, I just thought for the occasion. But it's, but that's a really structured and it's like an incredibly, as you say, spiritually coherent and disciplined process, which is very interesting. Do you find, have you actually trained anyone else? Like, I mean, I know some of the artists that you've mentored. Is this something that you've trained other people in? Isn't just said, well, this is what you do if you're stuck?
Not really. Like, I mean, I've worked with a couple of artists in the studio. I don't know about, but they say that I'm a very strict person. I'm a very strict studio mate. Like, I'm very tough. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe Amanda can comment about that. But I try to, like, I'm super playful. But when it comes to me creating work, I try to be like be on point. We say, okay, today we are making paintings. I want you this week. What have you done? And how have you challenged yourself? So I mean, I don't normally go in the studio and say we do it like this. We just like it's organic. Like if you can borrow, because I'm borrowing to them as well when we are in that space. When I worked with Amanda Mshati, she was like, I can't work without music. I was like, that's exactly what you don't need. Because let's say we remove music in this world, you're no longer an artist. How compare the work that you make with music and the work that you make and find the balance, and that's your work. So every sort of like obstacle, everything. I can't really come and say, oh, this is what go and write a note about a certain work. Sometimes some people are just naturals. They can just get it straight away. I know Wycliffe can make 3 paintings in a day, just like that. And so you'll be talking to you'll be laughing in the studio, you'll be the loudest person, not paying attention to his work, but it will be magnificent at the end. And some of us, we need to like, okay, sort of like moment of concentration and moment of peace, and just to be sort of like sort of like lethal in the production. So, but I mean, overall, for me, there's no sort of like a process. Uh, it depends who I am that day and what I'm trying to achieve. And the work is super different, but I'm just happy the way that I work with, whereby like I can say, okay, today I don't normally decide, but if the work is coming more abstract, I go that way. If I come up with okay, wow, I started with a beautiful, brilliant figure. I'm gonna keep it. And I mean, you, Jonathan and Valerie, you've been there for me. Because sometimes I don't know where to stop because I'm like, okay. Yeah, no, because yeah, like as an artist, you have to have your own.
Yeah.
Because you have to see yourself as a scholar every day. You need to learn something in the studio. Okay, you can't. I try as much as I can not to be satisfied with the painting that I made 1 month ago.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
What are you working on right now?
Oh, right now I have a show coming up, a solo show coming up at the Johannesburg Art Gallery in August.
Okay, wow.
Johannesburg Art Gallery.
Amazing.
So in August, so I can't say I have a specific theme that I'm working, but I'm just gathering those around until I find my.
You make a lot of work. It's a big space.
Yeah, so I'm just gathering thoughts around. I'm just working every day, trying to. Because the other thing is like I don't want to. I don't want to bind myself and say I want to talk about this time. I want to address this time. I want to paint. I want to make good paintings. I want other because one thing that I found like I want to make like paintings for people like you and Valerie, people who really like painting as it is. Like forgetting everyone else. I'm selfish. Come on. I just want to make paintings for this type of audience. We say, okay, we can be nerds all day about painting. Oh, blah blah blah, blah. Boom, boom, boom. That's what I want. So when I'm working, after I've made like maybe I'll make like 30 paintings. Maybe you and maybe we can all come together and say, okay, maybe let's put this work in this direction, or let's talk about this, but all in an organic way. Because if I find that often if I try to speak about something, I end up losing it because I'm forcing myself in a sort of like a trap or in a corner to speak. And there's no way that you fully understand anything because things changes and every subject changes and perception and views and people like. So I just try to make paintings, and of course, if I make them like in one period, like let's say in 1 month or in one term, those paintings are gonna have similarities at the color, at the symbols and stuff, and then we can talk about that. And that's the subject matter.
That's a beautiful defense of the kind of magic of painting. It's like it's the cardinal sin, which is to like speak about the end before you've got there. And it's an incredible way that you very subtly dodged the question there. I'm impressed.
But I think it also raises, I mean, a really important point. And I was literally just, you saw me in the gallery, Gresham, speaking with somebody and saying that, and you might want to comment on the idea of politics in art, and also the pressure to politicize art. I think you are somebody who really manages to kind of just walk on that razor's edge, because your work is inherently and always political, and yet without ever compromising its artistic and painterly values. And I think that makes you kind of rare in many ways, because people are, even if they don't understand the politics that are like, or the very sort of specific Zimbabwean politics that you're addressing in your work, they can understand kind of, I guess, the elements, the elements of metaphor that you bring, the fact that they need to read into them, and you don't compromise. How do you, I mean, without necessarily mentioning names, or maybe mention names, but about how you feel about some of the, say, pressures on painters or young painters right now on this generation of painters, and also on painters in Africa in particular, in the context of addressing politics or not addressing politics in their work?
I still like don't really like. Of course, people say that my work is maybe political or it's not, because my work comes from a was like you need to understand that for me, I'm not just speaking about politics on the level. I'm speaking on the type, the way I'm living in my household, the way I'm living in my community is affected by politics. And if I speak about that, it's like I'm being honest to my neighborhood or to my existence and to how I live as an artist. So I think that's what I try to do as much as I can. Like whereby like people will say, "Oh, Gresham, why you paint a lot of chairs? The chairs, does it depict like that? Does it mean it's a symbol for whatever?" I'm like, come on, we all use chairs in our houses every day. And there was this particular chair I'm telling you about. Like my grandmama used to say, "Beat you up if you sit on that chair." It had power. If she was not around, you sit on that chair. You want to feel what it feels like. So now I have all these stories, and but necessarily I don't need to explain to anyone. Okay, the thing is, I try as much as I can to just speak truth to my existence, speak truth to my like what builds me up as an artist. And so the other thing is like what you're asking about young artists trying to be political or trying not to be political. Already you are sort of like you're hindering your practice because you're not. Basically, you need to not worry about subject matter. You just need to worry about like, do you like? Of course, subject matter it matters, but what I'm saying is you need to worry about making a good painting. And making a good painting, you have to work every day. But when you start to think about what's like what I was saying, they start to think about what student style do I use? What's the market like? I mean, because there was the other big political thing that was happening in Africa, whereby I think it's dying now, whereby the black portraiture or the black body, black figure, whereby each and every artist was like forced to paint this, and sometimes like of course, but I mean maybe you don't want to speak about, because everyone has got his own matters to speak about. You've got his own agendas with your own work. What makes your art piece? Or what is it really that you want to talk about? Then what's, because I mean it becomes political whereby portraits, black figures, and now it's sort of like it's a market thing whereby if you paint in a certain way, or if you paint a certain body in a certain way, and I mean I don't think that's good for even young artists. Just go with yourself and just like everything. It's like everything will fall into place. That's what I think.
You know, when in the beginning you spoke beautifully about connecting with that 5-year-old part of yourself, that imagination, that childhood imagination. It's something I relate to, and it's less to do with the kind of outside idea of a kid, but it's something about that presence within your body and that feeling within your soul when you didn't know that there were limits, you know, and that
exactly.
you were able to work from within, from a feeling within your body, which didn't know that it wasn't possible to do these things like fly or, you know, climb the biggest tree, etc. And even when, as a child, you say, draw me a tree, there's no hesitation. Like, what does a tree look like? You just draw a tree, and then
is it an apple tree?
Yeah,
a strawberry. Like, just go for the tree.
And I remember watching my own kids, you know, they would draw a tree and then just say, yeah, I've done it now. You know, it's not, is it a good drawing or a bad drawing? It's just a tree. And I wonder what is your technique to kind of regress to that state in your own practice? You know, how do you recover that feeling?
For me, I block everything else. Like I block the markets, I block other people's perception. I try. I mean, my only authority when I'm painting is people like you, Jonathan, artists, painters. What's Jonathan gonna think about this painting? Was for me, sometimes I take it as a sport as well. I was like, okay, Jonathan came up with this marvelous exhibition. What am I gonna do next? This is pressure on me in a good way. So I think that's the people that really made us to me. But I mean, and the upper end about that is like, you understand if I come up with that drawing 5-year-old in my painting, you understand the language. You get it. So it's now it becomes easy for me not to, because I mean, once you start to think, okay, what's the idea, what's the audience gonna think about this week or whatever. No, for me it doesn't matter. What matters is like, I've made this painting, like Valerie visited my studio on Tuesday earlier this week. Then she saw what I was working on. And my only worry after that is like, whatever she saw, when she comes next Tuesday, she should say, okay, whatever you're doing last Tuesday, it was not, I'm more into this. So it's always, yeah, you get better by the next brush stroke, better by the next painting. And I try as much as I can to, that's my only worry, by like, how can I sort of like make this painting, whatever I've just done in the past 2 days, how can I make it better? How can I improve? If it is color, how can I maybe more bold? Or how can I be more, if I want to show vulnerability in my work, how can I be more vulnerable? How can I be? So, and all this comes with being frank with yourself and saying, okay, this color and this color, I know it doesn't work. But I mean, like what Valerie always says, famous quotes, no one's gonna die. So I'll put it together and work it, and that's the magic. And if it works, it's a win. You know, I've discovered something. Like what you're saying about the kid. The kid doesn't care. Draw me a table, doesn't care. Should it be a coffee table? Should it be just a table? Come on. There's your table. So if you can reach that space as an artist, and I wish all like artists that are coming before me, if they could go and show what they think on what, either than what the market persists that they should be talking about it. Because I mean, earlier I was talking to another friend of mine who's showing in Basel right now. He was like, you know, I'm only 2 years. I don't know why I'm here. I need pointers for me. I'm like, oh, you're only there because you did what you to do best in your studio. Doesn't mean that you have to. Doesn't mean like it's sort of like an endorsement, or it's sort of like marriage to be showing in a certain space. The first marriage comes in your studio. If you make something and you smile and you go after you make a painting and you go and you hold your waist and you give a sigh of relief, smiling, I'm like, wow, I did this today. Go to sleep a happy person. That's a win. And I assure you, the rest that comes, those are just like cherries on top of the cake. I think like young artists should worry less about okay, whatever the political structure is or whatever. Just make a good painting. How do you make a good painting? Make a good painting by practicing every day, by challenging yourself, by exploring more and more in your ideas. And like, I mean, so for me, the other thing that I try to do as well is like, when I paint a painting, let's say I paint a painting in abstract, then I paint a super realistic painting. I'm saying, okay, how do I say good morning in French? If I say good morning in Shona, is it the same message that I'm saying? If I'm allowed to speak in English language, I choose to speak it that morning. And that's what I do.
Beautiful. I love it. I discovered recently that that carving wood was a language that I knew. I didn't know that I wanted to do it until I did it. And I don't draw this line between sculpture and painting now, but when I started doing it, I thought it was like having an affair, you know, and like painting was looking at me and going, yeah, fuck you. And that when I went back to painting, it would feel diminished in some way, or it would be stolen in some way. I'm really happy to have discovered that it hasn't done that for me. But the language of painting is so natural to you. I wonder if there's another language that you've looked over the fence and wondered what it might be like to play there.
Well, I can't believe like you have a, because I have a thing, I have a passion for wood as well. Like,
yeah,
I've got ideas like, well, I mean, it comes from chairs. I wanted to make wooden chairs, and now I'm thinking about making wooden doors. I think if I ever go sculptural, it will be wood for starters for me. And I like the smell. Like painting, it's always about the smell,
Yes.
texture, and the carving, taking away bits and taking away the bits and pieces. And the good thing about like wood, if you go in the wood, like there's this, because I mean the painter thing is still in me. I see color, like I can see shades
Yes.
in grains of wood and stuff and everything, and that's beautiful. And I think I would take up wood sculpture. Like
Brilliant.
No, I don't look. I think he's lying there because what happened to your fledgling career in hip hop? This is something who wanted to be in music. The art was like a sideline. Come on,
No.
confess now.
I mean, I had a lot of things going on. I thought at that point, I was growing up. At that point, I thought I was gonna be the next Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, wow.
Then it came the fashion era. That's why it's like it's not. I mean, it's really occurring now in my work, whereby like I thought I would make like fashion, like but for me, I tried all these avenues, but I didn't know. And the last thing that I tried, thanks to Wycliffe, he knew Wycliffe was like, why are you always being into all these things? And you're such good at making drinks. Like I didn't paint back then when I was school, but I would create posters for the school and stuff. And Wycliffe would be like, dude, and Zach Chayamagas would be like, why are you thinking that you can be? You've got a terrible voice. What do you think you can rap?
Kept you honest. This is a value of good friends. Somebody will tell you that you have a terrible voice.
So so I mean there were all those areas whereby like I was just trying different avenues of art because I knew that somewhere I belonged in the whole arts industry. But but now that I know like where my placement is, so I would pick up wood sculpture. But of course, like I wouldn't want to limit myself. But one thing that I promise myself is if I want to get to the bottom of painting, whereby I can say, okay, give me a brush in the middle of the night, just wake up 5 seconds later, I'm making a painting. I want to be there, and that painting will be brilliant to be. That's why I believe like if you want to change the world, it needs to be like one dedication to one thing, and that small thing can make like. So I think for me, it's painting, whereby I'm gonna try as I can to push painting to the best of my abilities and really try to of course some other things might come, but I think my love is painting right now. How I'm able to speak in volumes and communicate with everybody else and with the world through painting is so phenomenal for me. So I think I'll stick to painting, but you never know. Maybe the hip hop career might come back.
It's probably the best conversation I've had about your painting, ironically through a screen, but it's really nice to connect in this way. And I'll definitely be using that writing about a thing when you're not able to paint it. That's such a brilliant, it's like kind of conscious intentional manifestation, but taking a different angle at it. You could use it in another way when you're trying to write something and it's not working and you just do the drawing.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for allowing me to talk about my work. Artists love to speak about their work.
No, they don't. No, they don't. It's actually more about having a safe space to talk about. Do you know what I mean?
There's that as well. There's that.
There's a difference because you're not, like we're not asking you to perform.
No, it's not a sort of jumping performance. Sort of talk about your history and awesome.
DM us now and press subscribe.
Absolutely.
And share alike.